thanks to the fact that we grow indoors, we don't have any pests, and therefore we don't need to apply any pesticides. And these chemicals usually are very destructive for natural ecosystems.
So you do not use any pesticides at all?
No
Wow.
pesticides at all. So yeah, there's actually two pathways you can take when thinking about farming. Either you control the environment or you control the plant, GMO. So these are two different pathways you could take. We take in the CEA, controlled environment agriculture industry, we take that path of controlling the environment and not the plant itself. Of course, there might also be hybrid solutions where you can control both.
In a world increasingly facing the challenges of climate change, with the Building Green podcast, we will dive deep into the intersection of architecture, design, urbanism, and environmental responsibility. I'm Ladina Schipp, your host. I've been an architect and building site manager for the past 10 years. During my studies at ETH in Switzerland, as well as in my working environment, I've had many touchpoints with sustainability, like many of you, I guess. I've also learned to question what I've been told, which is why I decided to go deeper into the topic and uncover what sustainability actually means. My mission is to highlight the transformative power of sustainable architecture, not just as a practice, but as a catalyst for broader societal change. Subscribe for more of our content and enjoy the show. Welcome to our podcast episode with Marc Zahran, a fellow architect and quite a visionary. Marc and I studied architecture at ETH Zurich together, but his path quickly diverged from traditional architecture. Marc's journey into sustainable architecture began during his exchange semester in Mexico City. Inspired by Dr. Dixon Despommiers' book on vertical farming, Marc embarked on a journey to revolutionize the way in which we use space. In his own words, we as architects should be masters of space. We should also think about the space that we intentionally redesign for the sole purpose of feeding ourselves. About 40% of all ice-free land is used for agriculture, which means cultivating acres, whereas only 3% of all land is used for cities, where people actually live. His architectural thesis evolved into a real-world feasibility study for a vertical farm in Switzerland with the company Holcim. As the project quickly grew too large and expensive, the team decided to bring the project to life in a smaller way. They built a container. And this is how their company Yasai was born. Marc is convinced that if we shift the way we eat and the way we produce, we can have a tremendous impact on the environment and create more space for the natural ecosystem. Join us as Marc shares his inspiring journey and the impact of his work on our environment. So you said then you got to that pallet project, let's say, or to the container system. Can you explain how that works? And first of all, what do you produce with vertical farming?
Oh yeah, good question. So we produce today mainly edible plants for retail. So such as Coop and Dielmoli, Farmi.ch. And we grow herbs, basil, mint, dill, coriander, and so on. And this is actually what we sell today. And in the future, we will also grow salads and sell salads within the Swiss market.
And other veggies like broccoli or carrots or cucumbers, is there any reason why you're not pursuing that?
Yes. In vertical farming, you create an artificial environment to grow something which is usually not easily growable outside or in the outdoors, basically. So therefore, what we focus on is everything that you usually need to import. So all the products, such as herbs, are many times flown in, especially now in winter time. You will see that they come from Morocco or Kenya, Israel, South Africa, and so on. And that's not really necessary to fly in products to eat. So we rather produce it locally. And whatever you could grow outdoors easily or easier, we would recommend to grow outdoors.
Okay, is that because the energy consumption indoors is bigger than outdoors, I guess?
Correct, and the cost is also a factor, because you build a building basically to grow plants, but then whereas outdoors you don't need to build anything, so the initial investment is much lower to actually grow anything.
But I also thought, talking about the space, since it's vertical, you can stack much more than outdoors on a horizontal farm or
Absolutely,
in a traditional farm.
It's much more efficient in terms of space-wise. So therefore, it is more space resourceful, but still then you need to make sure, for instance, if we talk about spatial zoning codes, vertical farming as of today can't be built on agricultural land, only on industrial zones. So what we end up paying is actually rents for industrial zones and not agricultural zones. So that's quite an interesting fact, even though we are a farm.
But you're in a building.
Exactly, it's a bit...
Yeah, I guess agriculture also gives back to nature, right? Yes. I don't know the definition of what is agricultural land and what is industrial land, but...
It's a good question. So if you look at the term agriculture, it actually means cultivated acre.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so, but you don't cultivate acre, you cultivate...
We cultivate water, substrates, I don't know. Yeah.
So have you ever compared like the energy or in general the resources you need to produce basil, let's say, compared to flying it in?
Yes, we did 2 independent studies. One study was from the universities with our InnoSwiss project, and another study was with My Climate. Perhaps you know these institutions. They calculate a lot of these life cycle assessments, it's called, and with both institutions we came to a very similar outcome basically. Growing herbs in vertical farms is more resourceful and less CO2 intense than it is than flying them in, basically. So
okay.
It doesn't make more sense to fly herbs in anymore as of today, in terms of ecological sense, let's say.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about the resources. How much water and energy and I don't know what else you need to, what other resource you need to produce? How much do you need to produce, let's say, I don't know, if you, in how many plants you calculated, compared to a vertical farmer, a traditional farmer?
Well, it's quite, we didn't do the metrics on the energy, more on the CO2 emissions, basically.
Okay.
And if I remember it right, yeah, I can tell you now out of my head how many grams of CO2 per kilogram produce that we emit compared to the others. But in general, what's very important in terms of energy is actually which energy source do you use, right?
That was going to be my next question.
Yes. So what I can tell you is if you grow within a vertical farm based on fossil fuels, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any ecological sense. Because then you actually burn fossil fuels to just light up a room with plants in there. So it's actually critical that you use renewable energy sources or less energy intensive sources, let's say, for that reason. And then you can lead to a way where it becomes more sustainable.
And where do you get the energy from? Wind or solar?
Luckily, we have in Zurich, or in Switzerland in general, we have a very large net of renewable energy sources. And we have a renewable energy package from EKZ. Basically.
You don't have your own solar panels and stuff?
Not in that scale.
Okay.
This pilot is just too small to make sense that we would build a whole solar roof.
Okay.
Exactly. So in next projects, for sure, there it makes sense. But in a pilot farm as it is here, it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. So tell me, how does it work?
Mm-hmm.
How does the whole process and technology work?
So what I can tell you, what is perhaps most perplexing for people is usually that these plants grow only in water. Mm-hmm. There's no soil, so it's called hydroponic. It's a soilless cultivation of plants. And we basically just put nutrients into that water, and the plants are, or the seeds are in a small substrate, and then actually the roots feel the water, the humidity, and reach out, and then you will see that they actually reach out into the water and grow from there. Mm-hmm. And grow them.
Is that better than using soil, or?
It has advantages, let's say, because since we have the soilless cultivation, we only have water, and this water is constantly being recycled. So we need 95% less fresh water than in outdoor farming.
Wow.
So for water-stressed regions, that's definitely a good solution. At the other hand, by growing indoors, because we basically grow indoors and then have artificial lights that mimic the rhythms of the ideal day for a plant. And
so the light goes off at night?
Yes, they sleep. Actually, that's when plants grow. It's when it's dark.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So during the day, they collect all the energy. They're like, yeah. And then during the sleep period, let's say dark period, they grow. So we create something which is called a grow recipe. And each plant has a different grow recipe, basically, which is then applied for that specific plant, let's say. So it's quite interesting. As we grow, we learn more about the plants themselves and how they interact with each other, but also what their needs are and so on. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to humans. Humans, for instance, perform best when it's 21 degrees Celsius, for an office environment, let's say. Similar, it's with plants. They have a certain temperature where they perform best and grow best.
So is your growing process faster than one outside that's not in perfect conditions?
Yes, it's much faster actually. And we can have many more cycles as well, because we can grow all year round.
Yeah.
And not just on the summers, let's say. Mm-hmm. And indoors. And thanks to the fact that we grow indoors, we don't have any pests, and therefore we don't need to apply any pesticides. And these chemicals usually are very destructive for natural ecosystems.
So you do not use any pesticides at all?
No
Wow.
pesticides at all. So yeah, there's actually two pathways you can take when thinking about farming. Either you control the environment, or you control the plant, GMO. Mm-hmm. So these are two different pathways you could take. We take in the CEA, controlled environment agriculture industry, we take that path of controlling the environment and not the plant itself. Mm-hmm. Of course, there might also be hybrid solutions where you can control both. But I think it's what we built with monocultures in outdoor farming has been very destructive for natural ecosystems, because it then affects not only the plants, but also these pesticides also affect the insects, the bees, and so on.
The whole ecosystem.
Correct.
Yeah. And how much you produce?
As of today, we produce about, in packages, we produce about 10,000 packages per week, and that results in about 20 tons per year of herbs. Yeah.
And do you know how much you could produce in traditional farming in that time?
On that same plot, yes, I can quickly calculate it. It's about, so on the same field, let's say, mm-hmm. on the same area, you would be able to perhaps lead to 900 kilograms.
So half of it?
No.
Wow.
20th.
Crazy.
Yeah. That's about the amount you would be able. Depends, of course, of the plant. Mm-hmm. Different plants have different kinds of yields, but that's about it. Yeah.
And do you think consumers are sufficiently informed about the benefits that vertical farming has, like the less energy consumption, no pesticides?
Well, this is something that we advocate. This is also the role of startups, I think, and believe that next to universities and food bloggers and so on, I think startups many times also have the role of educating the consumers about a new product, let's say. And therefore, usually, to give you one example, Tesla definitely also educated consumers about electronic vehicles, for instance. Or any other example, planted, let's say.
So then my question was, are you doing a good job?
I don't know. I hope so. I think we could do better, but it's. I think we could do actually much better in communicating more. But that's also a resource question. How many resources do you have available for marketing, sales, and so on?
Are you just in Switzerland for now?
Yes.
Why?
Well, the Swiss market itself is already quite large, let's say. We are constantly sold out, and we actually would require to build farms 10 times the size to just cover the demand that we have as of today.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And are you planning that?
Yes, we're planning also collaborations. We're looking at the whole industry of vertical farming, and also whether we can create partnerships with other vertical farming companies, which perhaps already are at a more mature state, so we can leapfrog certain technology challenges and so on. So instead of repeating everything for your own, you just work together.
That's cool. And are there some things that you're that are a no-go for you if they would, let's say, grow with soil or pesticides or?
Yes, I think what's a big no-go is exactly these points, like if they grow with pesticides, but usually that no one does that in vertical farming. It's just not necessary. And it's also a hygiene question and risk, basically. And at the same time, what I advocate for within the vertical farming industry is building farms based on renewable energy, because only then it actually makes sense. On the customer side of, let's say, what's the pain or the need of retailers and so on, they usually have an issue with their supply chain. So that's actually what their pain is that we need to solve. So with vertical farming, you can create more resilient supply chains.
A few of you might know that I recently opened my own architecture studio, and I just started with a podcast. I'm very excited to build a platform where I connect with inspiring people to learn along the way and share these learnings with you. So if any little thing has inspired you, or if you learned anything new, I'd appreciate if you could rate the show or share my content on social media, Spotify or YouTube or wherever you listen to it. And if you think there are any touch points between you and me, I'd be super happy to connect with you. Feel free to reach out on any platform. And your products, are they more expensive or cheaper than other products in the supermarket in Switzerland, for example?
Today they are 20 to 30% more expensive, but it's actually not because we want it. We could have the same price, but it's more because Coop sees that people see an advantage in having Swiss products all year round. Whereas with other products, you have a disadvantage, basically.
So do you think it gives the consumer like a feeling of I'm investing into something better if it's more expensive than if it has the same price?
The psychology of consumers is a whole topic for itself. But what we saw is consumers, they have about 3 seconds to decide if they look at your product. So most often a consumer is not aware, even if they look at our product, they don't think about vertical farming. They look at, oh, there's a Swiss flag. Okay, nice. Oh, it looks nice. It is outstanding. And we chose also the color white, for instance, which gives more strength to the green color. So things look actually better as well. And then once the users or consumers have it at home, perhaps they invest a little bit more time into that product. But usually if you think about yourself, how much time do you dedicate to each and every product?
Yeah, that's right.
In the market.
Yeah. I think something that might be questionable, but that I'm just thinking of right now, the other herbs that you can buy at Coop, for example, are like in this recyclable cardboard thing, and you have, is it printed? Yeah, it looks printed. Is that less sustainable, the packaging?
So with packaging, you have a trade-off usually. It's always a question of shelf life and how much packaging do you have. And in that case, we chose a cardboard packaging, which internally has a film of plastic still, and that keeps the product alive much longer than it would be without. We also tested alternatives such as cellulose foils or algae foils and so on. The issue there was actually that just the humidity wasn't kept inside the product or inside the box. And then these products dry out quickly. So instead of having a shelf life of 9 days, 11 days, you would only have it for 3 or 4 days.
Okay, that's
so you
not
end up
more
having,
sustainable then.
Exactly, you end up just throwing away much more products actually. So with packaging, we advocate that the longer the shelf life, the better.
Yeah.
Because then you create less waste and less food waste as well. But of course, I think the best would still be to have a pot plant, let's say, and then regrow it as many times as possible. But usually with the pots, they also come with a lot of plastic within the supply chain. So there's no one solution that is hitting it all. Right now, I think with the convenience packaging products, you can actually achieve quite a good mix between waste and the value of products that you get.
I usually freeze them when I buy them.
Oh, that's
because then you don't even have to chop them, you can just break them.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. So yeah, this is also part of educating people, I think. How could you use things in your fridge that
that's why you're doing like cook shows or working together with cooks, right?
Yes, exactly. I actually learned myself.
And are you thinking of, another question, because you said about the little plant, would that be possible for you to sell plants?
We use that for events usually. We have little glasses with water inside, and then we just put the plant with the roots inside. And they actually are very much liked by consumers.
And could I just put them at home and they would live?
Correct, yeah. You just, I actually made an experiment with a coffee shop just where I live. And they kept that plant, I was quite astonished, for more than 5 months. But yeah, I mean, they didn't eat it. They just
But I mean, if you eat it, it's probably going to last that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it might regrow a couple of times, but not infinitely.
Yeah. Yes. And are you planning into going into industries?
Yes, we look a lot at adjacent industries such as flavor and fragrance.
What would that be?
To give you an example, flavor and fragrance is vanilla. So today it has become quite an issue to supply vanilla due to the climate change that occurred also in Madagascar. There was quite a scarcity in vanilla production recently.
And it's all handwork, right?
Yes, it's a lot of labor,
a lot of work, yeah.
As well. And in that case, I see tremendous potential in working with large corporates which need to source a lot of vanilla, let's say Nestle, or other plants such as coffee. And there we already see in partner companies and within the industry quite some successful progress, let's say.
And they grow vanilla indoors vertically?
As well as coffee and many other things you could actually grow for the edible market. And then there's also a cosmetic market, right? And to give you one example, what we looked at is the roots of basil. So 50% of the biomass that we grow is actually the roots. And these roots have also quite good ingredients for cosmetics, apparently.
Really?
Yes. So we were quite surprised. So I think there's a lot of opportunity also on that regard to how to optimize your waste or create no waste if possible. Yeah.
Do you know what benefits that would have for like consumers and as well for your investors?
Well, if you can sell more of the biomass that you grow, you have a better profit margin, let's say. So that's good for investors. And on the other side, for consumers become more and more aware and ask more and more the how, or how is this product created?
Yeah.
How is this product grown? And this we observe over time, and it might become even more critical in the future. So creating supply chains that are more sustainable will be very important for a lot of companies. Whether it's in the food industry, whether it's in fragrance or cosmetics industry, or also whether it's in the construction industry, we need to think more about the materials that we use.
And like the circularity, where else it can be used. And talking about that, I heard in a podcast or in an interview that you said that the energy you produce or the vertical farm could be used as an infrastructure for
Yes.
smart cities.
Yes, I love that concept.
Can you explain that?
Yes, so we have a lot of lights in these farms, and these lights also create heat as an extra product. And this heat you can capture and you can reuse it, for instance, in winters to heat up neighboring spaces or apartments and so on.
Have you tested that?
Yes, we actually built a whole infrastructure here, but we did not find a consumer in that region for that heat, but we actually created the whole system, And there's a lot of demand for that, for such solutions actually. So
super interesting.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of farms, a lot of industry here, and as well homeowners and houses. That's super interesting.
Yes, and if you can integrate vertical farming into the urbanized environment, let's say, I think that might be quite an interesting aspect, because you reintegrate silent industry. It's quite silent compared to other industries. And it's also a clean industry where you don't have any kind of emissions that will be polluting the lived environment, let's say.
It would be super interesting for urbanistic evolution to get the farms back into the city, because you would be needed in the middle of the city just to heat up a big area.
Yes, that would be highly interesting. And then you could also think about connecting people and plants via interfaces, and basically you you don't need the middleman anymore. So you create more value for the consumer because he has fresher products for lower prices, and the farmer has better prices and more connection to the consumers. But that's a concept, and I haven't seen it played out anywhere so far.
Okay.
Yeah, successfully. There's one example in New York though, and they have some kind of subscription agreement with direct consumers, and I think it works well, but it's a very small scale.
Yeah. I haven't heard of anything similar yet as well.
Yeah.
And if you had like, you sound like quite a visionary, if you had like all the resources of the world available, what innovative project would you do?
Oh, wow. So I think with the food system, we have a tremendous challenge ahead. And if we can create cities that are more, because I really like, that's also why I like architecture so much. I like the fact that we as human beings create such organizations and cities which are highly complex and interconnected on a very dense area of land, basically. And if we could create cities that are more resilient, basically almost self-sufficient to a certain degree, we could create cities that are within a sea of biodiversity instead of how it is today. Today we have an urbanized environment and cultivated environment, basically, with islands of biodiversity. So if we could switch that, I think that would be quite a nice vision to go to if we think about how we create cities. Because today we have a city and then you have so much land that is actually needed to feed that city, particular city, just to, and yeah. So,
yeah, it's a nice vision.
Yeah, so all these kind of technologies which include indoor farming or high precision farming or algae farms or mushroom farms and so on, I think they have quite a future ahead because we need to rethink the way we build cities on that regard.
And talking about that, I remember when we met a few weeks ago, you told me you'd just gone to Saudi Arabia to an event about the line. They are building a new city. Are they implementing more vertical farming or more ecosystems, or what is their
view? So the whole region, NEOM, has different projects in it. One is Octagon, one is the Line, and another one is R2 resorts, one in the sea and one in the mountainscapes. So basically what you could see in the Line is, I don't know whether it's a dystopia or utopia, to be honest. But what I think is a good thought of pattern, a good thought that the creators have is basically to densify the built environment as much as possible, to have an as low as possible footprint on the natural ecosystem, which, if you look documentaries about the wildlife of Saudi Arabia, it's quite surprising how much wildlife they have there, and how diverse it is. They have leopards, they have gazelles, they have all kinds of, even sharks in the seas and crocodiles and so on from the Red Sea. So basically, if we think about creating the cities of tomorrow, we should think about creating a smaller footprint, and especially in an environment as it is in Saudi Arabia, where everything outside is anyway too hot.
Yeah.
It might make sense to create very compact compounds, let's say, of dwellings.
Yeah, vertical densification.
Yes, maybe, or vertical densification and compact cities, basically. So you don't sprawl out, because if you look at Riyadh is a very flat city, almost Los Angeles-like city, and it's just, they need so much fossil fuel just to actually fuel or cool down that whole city all the time, which is quite, who would build a city in the desert?
And how do they grow plants and everything? Is it open about? No, everything is like closed, right?
At Neom, there's so many different designs, so nothing is yet confirmed.
Okay.
So I don't know,
Okay.
to be honest.
Okay.
I'm not that much in the details of the project. Yeah.
Okay, so one last question and then we can do the farm tour.
Sure.
Can you debunk one green myth for me?
One green myth.
That people think is more sustainable than something else.
What I think is a little bit of a myth is natural gas. So it's a very smart branding of gas, basically. But still, gas in itself is a fossil fuel, right? And if you burn it, you will create more CO2 and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And therefore, I think it's very important that we consciously switch to renewable energy sources as soon as possible. And basically also think about these kind of circular systems. But we many times are, and there's a big lobby behind it, blinded by good branding, let's say. And natural gas is a very good branding, but it's not the solution. So it's not the solution that you would create natural gas out of any kind of systems and then just burn it and release it again, basically.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that's, I think, one big term that I would debunk. Yeah.
I thought you would say something like, eat more greens.
Yeah, I mean, okay. There's one thing that I really recommend to look at is the planetary health diet. And it's quite interesting. So a planetary health diet is a diet that is healthy for humans, but also healthy for the planet. And it's quite interesting how similar it is. So whatever is healthy for you as a human might up being healthy for the planet as well.
Can you say like one or two specific things they say?
Yes, so they basically show you the whole range of diets, basically. So you can see there's a little bit of meat, there's a little bit of grains, there's a little bit of vegetables and fruits and dairy products. And what we have today is more an imbalance. So we have way too much in meat. They don't say don't eat any meat, they just say eat less. And we have actually insufficient amount of vegetables and fruits in our diets today. And if you are able to balance this out, so eat a little bit less meat and eat a bit more of the other stuff, you will end up being more healthy yourself, but also you will end up creating a more healthy environment with your choice of foods. Yeah.
That's super interesting. I'll have a look at it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's also backed by ETH science. So I hope it's true.
Let's believe it is. No, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
A huge thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to the podcast to support me and so you don't miss an episode. And while you're there, I'd also be so grateful if you could rate and review us. If you have any guest suggestions or any feedback, you can find me on the socials at Ladina Schipf. Thanks.